Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today what I thought we could cover is I would love to discuss a really common misconception that's out there in the general public surrounding what your best shoulder posture might be. And to be fair, it's perpetuated and has been perpetuated for a long time. And it's also something that I think the industry itself, medical industry, physical therapy, a lot of the health professionals probably still think about good posture in this way. So I thought it would be really important to make a video just detailing why a common perception of what a good shoulder posture is actually a little bit different to what it should be. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a really good understanding about why this particular postural shape is potentially doing the opposite of what you want to be achieving with good posture. So I think the really interesting place to start here is when we're talking about what a good posture is, I think, and you've probably done this yourself, you may practice this yourself as well, is we often promote that a good posture requires you to have your shoulders back and down. And I think it's something that's been around for a long time now. It certainly was when I was a kid. I'm in my mid-30s now. So, at least 20 years of this idea that a really good shoulder posture is shoulders back and down. But what I think is really important to understand here is it's actually a little bit different. It's not actually back and down. It should actually be back and up a little bit. And I think in order to understand why that is, because that can sound a little bit strange based on the reasons why we pull our shoulders back and down so much, in order to understand why this is important, I think it's really important to go back to the start and discuss why we've decided that shoulders back and down is important. Because we've done it for such a long time with the best intentions, and on a number of levels it makes sense. So we want to discuss what that is and then sort of talk about why that's not necessarily the case, because I think the common thought around why shoulders back and down is so strong these days is that we're actually missing a step. We're missing, I guess, a step before all of this, which completely changes our perspective on what a good posture should be, or what you should be trying to do to get back into a good posture. So I think the origin of this piece of advice, it's based on the idea that a lot of people have tight neck muscles, tight upper traps, and they're up in this position. So we sort of say, look, your shoulders, you lift those shoulders. Maybe you've heard the phrase, you're someone who keeps their stress in the shoulders, they keep their tension in their neck and shoulders. All these ideas promote this other idea that we're often in this sort of up position, that these muscles being tight are pulling us up. So in order to reset that shape, we want to pull them down again. Now, it's a really important distinction to make here, because what this idea suggests is that our upper traps and neck muscles somehow magically become tight in the first place. And while they do get tight, it doesn't just happen and gradually our shoulders float up. Because I think you'll agree with me here, if you look outside, go outside, look at your family inside, wherever you want to be, I think it's very rare to see anyone who sits in this position, and very rare to see anyone who walks around in this position. Most people are actually down and forward when they slouch, and I'll get to why that is in a second. But I think the step that we miss here is that those upper traps, those neck muscles, neck and shoulder muscles, don't magically just get tight and raise up on their own. So we don't have to be pulling those down. The step that we're missing here comes back to the basis of poor posture in the first place. So hopefully this will make more sense. So I think you'll agree with me again that traditional bad posture, traditional slouching occurs when gravity meets someone who's not keen to resist that gravity. So when we relax, the anatomy basically in response to gravity drops down and it rolls forwards. So we're in this position where things just drop down on this slope. And what happens over time is, because our arms and our shoulders are just hanging from that position, we create this excess tension and pull through our upper traps, through our neck, the upper back. And over time, if this is a position that we tell our body that we value, that we're in a lot, after a while of creating that constant tension through these areas, it becomes tight and stiff, because it's the body's reaction to that increased load. It toughens itself up, it stiffens the joints, tightens the muscles in order to support you in that position that you've deemed important. Now, this is the really important distinction, because those upper trap muscles, despite what we think, don't get tight because we're up here, or they don't get tight and pull ourselves up here. They get tight because we're actually doing the opposite, because we're constantly dropping down into this position and they're forced to tighten to try and support that shape. So again, when we look at it logically, trying to pull your shoulders back and down is obviously a very obvious solution to things feeling tight. We're trying to stretch those tissues to make them looser. But as you can hopefully see here, if the position that causes this tightness in the first place is down, then all we're doing is potentially perpetuating that same dysfunction without ever really giving it a chance to change. Now, I think it's a really important conversation, because if you're someone who tries really hard to practice good posture, you're conscious, you try and make a mental effort all the time, but you're still having a lot of neck, shoulder, upper back dysfunction, then this might be part of the problem. You might be getting into a position where you're absolutely pulling your shoulders back, which is important, but if you're also dropping those shoulders down, you're still creating that extra tension through the neck and the upper back, which doesn't give it a chance to free up and settle long term. And I think this is even more important for those people who have a lot of neural or nerve-related issues that come from the neck, whether it's thoracic outlet syndrome, carpal tunnel, excuse me, a lot of RSIs, tennis elbows that tend to originate from the neck and upper back. If part of the problem is because you're always hanging off these tissues and your solution is to pull your shoulder back, which is good, but to continue that depression of that shoulder girdle, then again, you're not necessarily taking away the underlying dysfunction that led you down that path in the first place. So it can be really hard to solve that without a little bit of luck. So I think it's a really important point to make here is that your best shoulder position for that reason should actually be back, which as I said is important, but also up a little bit. So again, we still want balance here. We don't want to go so far the other way where we get you actually being in these positions. We don't want a bunch of people in this position that will create other issues down the track. But what I would suggest you do, as I do to my patients, is I suggest that you take your shoulders back, but then just lift it up enough so you feel like you're comfortably supporting the weight of your shoulder. Because the problem that we see is that when those shoulders drop and you're just hanging off that tissue, the passive tension of that tissue, that's when we start telling your body that it needs to adapt, and it does so dysfunctionally. So shoulders back, but just support the weight of your shoulders so you don't feel like you're resting on them. And what you'll find over time is if you did nothing else to your neck and shoulders, these muscles and the joints in your neck and upper back would eventually start to free up and loosen again, because they're not consistently being asked to stay in that position. So sure, you can do some mechanical exercises, some strength work to increase the quality of that tissue. But again, an hour of strength work a day or an hour of strength work and stretches up against maybe 6-7 hours in this position a day, the balance doesn't tip in your favor long term. So I think it's a really important thing to discuss. Again, I'm always the first to say that talking about posture isn't very interesting. It's not very sexy. I'm passionate about it because I'm a nerd, but I wouldn't expect anyone else to be as passionate or interested in this sort of stuff as me, but you do have to respect it. So again, if your shoulders are down and rolling forwards from less than perfect shapes, you've got to pull them back and up a little bit to the point where you feel like they're in a comfortable position again. Otherwise, we can't solve the underlying problems that cause those issues in the first place. So I think that was something that I just wanted to touch on because it's such a common misconception in the industry at the moment and in the wider public. I know I certainly was aware of those shapes when I was younger, but working as a clinician, trying to figure these sorts of things out for myself, it's very clear now that it's actually back and up, which is more important than back and down, which is what we often see. So if you found that information interesting, let me know in the comments below. Let me know what your sort of preconceived ideas about this have been. Let me know what you feel about this information. Do you feel like it's interesting? Is it giving you, pause for thought? Is it something that's maybe the missing piece of your puzzle that you didn't realize you were looking for until watching this video? And if you did enjoy it, if you found it useful, let me know by leaving a like below as well. And as always, if you consider subscribing to the channel, it really helps these videos and this information, which I think is really important. The more sort of likes, comments, and subscriptions we can get, the more these videos get out to other people, the more likely they are to see it. And again, the idea of these videos is just to help as many people as possible. So if you could help us along the way, that would be fantastic. So if you've been following the channel though, we've done a video on what good posture is previously, but it's more so from the standpoint of if you're someone who has a less than perfect posture, here's a couple of basic exercises that you can do to make getting back into a good position easier. They're a little bit different to what you would expect because again, it's based on what I find works really well clinically. And there's mobility involved, there's strength work involved, but there's also sort of conscious application involved as well. So I'll leave a link to that up the top here as well. So if you'd like to check that out, that'd be great. But until next time, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it, and I'll see you soon.